and thanks, Media Post. Good morning, everyone. Good Austin morning. Those of us from New York and from the Northeast, we tried not to bring the fall, rainy, cold weather. Just would not, I know, jumped into our suitcases. Sorry about that. But hopefully we'll get it to turn around. So far, some great conversations. Charlie definitely queued up, as he said, a former Time Inker. I myself, having come to Meredith from Time Inc. With the pubs here, we definitely want to have a conversation, inviting you to join us in this conversation as we talk about how product really is the new content, how we can't just leverage content in itself. And as Steve mentioned, I do lead up ad product marketing. We have some 70 ad products at Meredith Corp. So obviously with 40 plus brands, we've got a whole lot going on, and we're definitely, as we're going to talk about, trying to make sure that we leverage our audiences and try to figure out what it is that they want. As the day has been queued up, how we as pubs are now starting to look like CPGs, right? At Meredith, we won't tell all of our CPG clients that, but certainly trying to sort of work in with that. And so certainly working in with that at Meredith. I also happen to be the publisher co-chair on the IAB's Native Social Content Committee, and we've also just had a working group that had to publish a branded content guide. So as we sit here trying to just generalize all these definitions for everyone, publishers and advertisers and vendors alike, we're all trying to have this conversation. So with Bill, Dennis, Rameez, and Yana, we're all going to jump into this conversation and really want to start with how are we actually leveraging our audiences to make sure that we have offerings that they want, that they'll actually pay for, above and beyond just the content that they're creating. And obviously at Meredith, with the many different brands that we have, the few 100 million unique views that we do get a month, right? Really, really large and diverse audiences, and then having products like thinking of our People brand and the People TV offerings that we have. As we're going to talk about, yes, as Charlie had mentioned, video is a big play for us. It is something that we can definitely leverage therein. We'll chat through how we're actually working with each of our audiences to try and go ahead and create some of these products that are even better than content. Starting with you, Bill.
Yeah, hi. As I mentioned when I asked the question, my name is Bill Allman. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Smithsonian in the media division. So we're not if you want to know what time the Air and Space Museum opens up, that's a different website. We are a content brand. We came out of the same group that produces Smithsonian Channel, Smithsonian Books, Smithsonian Magazine, and we're the magazine. We're a Smithsonian lens on the world, and it's been great. I'm actually a good person to be on this panel because I'm at the very beginning of this process. I feel a little bit shanghaied in that when I got there 5 years ago, our advertising team, which is the one way we got revenue, said, you're not big enough, you've got to get bigger. So I said, okay, name a number, and they named a number, and we got there, and a year later they said, okay, but you're still not big enough, you got to get bigger. So we started at 500,000 uniques, we just crested at 10 million, so that's good growth, it's not bad, but we're not big enough. So all of a sudden we've got to figure out, well, what are we going to do with this great big audience if we can't make enough money on programmatic and direct, which we're not, and we're doing some native. So it's a really interesting period of discernment because as everyone knows, about 7 to 10% of your audience produces about 50% of your views and content views and audience. So I don't know who those 10% people are, and I don't even know what they want. If you want me to go from 10 million to 20, which we could do, I know how to do that. I know what levers to pull. I don't know the levers to pull, and I don't even know what those people want. So when you think about Smithsonian, we're quasi kind of about the world. We do scientific discoveries. We do a lot of history behind. We have a great one about the history behind First Man. You should go look at it. It's great. We had someone from NASM comment on it. That's the kind of stuff we can do. But we don't know what someone would come to us every single day for. What is the I used to work at U.S. News and World Report. Anybody remember that magazine? They had something called News You Can Use. What's the Smithsonian version of News You Can Use? What's the Meredith version? I might go to Martha every day to get a meal or something. What's the equivalent of a recipe for Smithsonian or something that someone says, I'm going to go to Smithsonian because I know they'll have it. And my gut is that's how we're going to develop these products. We have live events. We're a little lucky because in addition to media, we also run tours If you want to take a tour of the mall or go to Antarctica, we can take you there with the scientists. We have tons of retail stuff. We sell freeze-dried ice cream. So how do we match up that media audience with our other products? We have existing products, but they don't talk to each other right now.
Great. Thanks, Bill. And Bill's our resident journalist, so he's going to be jumping in with questions as well on our conversation.
Recovering journalist.
Recovering, exactly. Reformed. Dennis.
Good morning. My name's Dennis Strong. I'm the Senior Vice President for Media Sales at Source Media. For those of you who don't know Source Media, we're a B2B digital information service, publisher, media property, spanning mostly on the financial services side, banking, financial wealth, and things of that nature, but also going across into healthcare, digital insurance, and a few other areas as well. When I think about some of the challenges that we've seen over the last couple of years during that transformation, I think we'll all agree we've gone through this print to digital transformation, but now what really is digital? And you hear a lot about audio and you hear a lot about different programs. Where Source Media has really focused a lot of its energy is, first off, looking at our different revenue streams. We have a subscription stream, we have live events, trade shows, and then we have what I'm going to call marketing services, which is media sales. The two former are about 25% of our revenue, and marketing services being about 50% of that revenue. But if you really think about that model, there's really only two ways people monetize with Source Media, right? There's those people who pay for content, whether that's through attending an event or subscribing, and then there's those organizations that want to reach those people, which really falls into marketing services and then that kind of sponsor exhibitor space for events. And what we're trying to do is really bring them together as a community. So rather than selling from a standpoint of this is the banking brand, more along the lines of people who are interested in a specific topic within banking, let's just call it digital banking, or even further, take it to like cryptocurrency. And building an event around cryptocurrency, but then also building a community of content consumers around cryptocurrency and creating an atmosphere in which they can talk and communicate and share. So that's one of the things that we've really been looking at. And the other really interesting approach that we've been taking is kind of that tentpole approach, looking at something like artificial intelligence. So if you look across all of our content streams, we really focus on compliance and regulation and then technology. So pulling something like artificial intelligence and looking at somebody like IBM who's interested in that, you know, that isn't specific just to banking or insurance. It's really something that plays in all of those different markets, and then building out a holistic program that focuses on that area.
How do you find this? If you don't mind me asking, I mean, how do you attract those bankers to come? You're B2B, right?
We are. We're using some of the tools that you'll hear about over the course of the day. BounceX, this morning we work with BounceX, and we work with a few others. I'm waving to the back of the room. But there are a number of tools that we use to identify the audience and then understand what type of content they're consuming based on how we tag the content. Another one that we're working
through search, though, mostly?
There's search, and then there's direct. We do have a very strong subscription model, so we get them that way as well.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis.
Hey everyone, Rameez, Tase. I run audience development and insights at Axios. For those of you who don't know Axios yet, we're a pretty new digital news company covering the collision of politics, technology, business, and media. I've been there for almost a year now, but we're, just telling Bill, not even 2 years old, so I don't know if that makes me a veteran, but not new either yet. And so the company was really founded a little bit less than 2 years ago on a couple different principles. And the first one was the fact that 5%, I think, of people that actually start an article actually get to the bottom. And that's indicative of the fact that basically the product, when it transferred from print to desktop to mobile, really didn't start with the first principles of the new technology. And so we created a company that did. And not only that, we really wanted the company to kind of be aligned with consumers. So again, going with the theme of this panel, we don't have a subscription model yet. Our CEO and founder has been on the record numerous times to his own chagrin about the fact that we might have one. But even if you look at our advertising, you need to read 3 articles on Axios to actually see an ad. We have no incentive to clickbait you, to trick you, or to do really anything that's not in your best interest, because we're not making money off it if we do. So as we kind of think about new products, we always think about, can we get this format that is aligned with the new technology of the day and the users into wherever we're going to go next, video, audio, more text, doesn't matter. And then the second thing we think about is, can we fund it with high quality information? We really won't ever get into something where we can't or can't clearly see the path to funding high quality information.
So how do you make your money then? No ads, no subscriptions. I want that model.
Right now, it's a combination of native advertising that's split between newsletter sponsorships and our on-site ads. The format of the ads in the newsletter and the site are very similar. Small events business and a small branded video business as well.
Great newsletter, by the way. So I'm Yana Wilson-Fischer, Circulation Marketing Director of North America and Latin America at The Economist. And I handle P&L for both regions in addition to acquisition marketing channels. So that would be, sorry, there's a fly by me, experiential marketing, partnerships, agents, external inserts, and direct mail. And it's a role I've been in for about 6 months, but rest assured I've been with The Economist for almost 3 years now, helping to grow a subscriber base and also push our content-first brand initiatives. So one of the ones that I was talking to everybody about was our most recent Open Future initiative, which coincided with our 175th anniversary. And the purpose of Open Future was really to spark a global conversation around market, tech, and freedom in the 21st century and what that really means. And we did it a variety of ways. So one, of course, our content from our regular editorial staff. Another way was student essay contests, kind of talking about what the new wave of the world should be. Student debates, guest editors like Bill Gates and Angelina Jolie. Experiential marketing, polling our social media platforms on specific topics. And it all ended with a 24-hour kind of live event across 3 different regions, 3 different cities, which was Hong Kong, London, and New York. And in New York specifically, in addition to the 6 months kind of leading up to this, we had Steve Bannon as one of the feature panelists. So it got us a lot of press, which was actually good for us in North America specifically, where we don't have as much brand awareness. But now my challenge is kind of how do we ride that wave and continue to grow our acquisitions and retain subscribers.
The Open Future is brilliant, I thought. It's great.
Thank you.
It's got tons of stuff. It's a big smorgasbord of lots of thinkers. But how did you fund it? I'm trying to, Sony has something, full disclosure, called Second Opinion, which is exactly the same, not exactly the same model, which is take a big question like the future of democracy or the immigration and try to bring a bunch of different scholars together to talk about it. And so we've done 3 or 4 of them, which is great, but now my CFO is saying, where's the money?
Yeah, for us, it was really how we packaged it. So, I mean, a lot of these things, market, tech, freedom, I mean, these are all things that we traditionally talk about anyway. It was more so igniting this global conversation, like I said. So, I mean, we even did like closed Facebook groups where, like you were saying, like, how can we create these communities where people are actually talking to each other and engaging each other in that way? And this was the first time that we really had a brand initiative that like everybody got behind. So it was editorial and marketing. So basically like marketing, I guess, funded it a little bit because we put a lot of our dollars behind it. But for us, it was really exciting because this was the first time we had a brand initiative in this way to really go out to the market with. So we'll see what happens in the future, but I think more of that type of stuff to come. And also the events that we did were consumer events. We typically do, more expensive events. So I mean, that was one way to monetize.
Great. Thanks, Yana, and thanks, Bill, and thanks all. I mean, this is really, the conversation that we've certainly been having here and expanding on exactly what Bill has already asked, how are we doing this, right? How are we getting in front of our audiences, finding out more about what they actually want, what they're actually going to pay for, kind of like what Yana's mentioning, we're finding these topics that they're interested in, then seeing how and why we should fund them. I know at Meredith, I coming from, with Time Inc. and helping the branded content studio launch, as we talk about these branded content studios that then have to play off of the editorial, and then all the products that we have that, yes, we've got influencer products. We also have shopper products, right? We've got so many food brands that we've got folks going ahead and looking at recipes, and then we can sit there and monetize and share in the revenue off of having to buy those ingredients and being able to do it right on the site. Those types of things, right? And then also at Meredith, we have, we own Viant, right? So we've got PII to play with that we've tried to figure out how we can use since Time Inc. therein. And then visual, I mean, we're sitting here with a lot of data visualization. We're spending a lot of time with that now, right? We've got all this data. What can we do with it? How can we go ahead and leverage the audiences? So that really is the question. Like, what's our infrastructure? How are we using this insight to then try and monetize? So how are you doing?
Is native, well, if you mind me asking, because
of
on the last person who talked about native, but my understanding is it is a sort of low margin and a low hit rate. So you have to work really hard, almost as hard as direct, to get a client. But the 90% failure rate, is it worth it? Is it working?
Yeah.
I mean, because it's sort of it's the one new content thing that actually seems to be working, sort of. So what are we learning from that, and what are you learning from it?
So it's a little, it's a bit of, with us, with native, I mean, because we have so much editorial content, we were talking about the difference between our sponsorship and our native, we kind of have that share of voice, right, with the publisher and also with the advertiser. So it's quite turnkey for us, right? So while it can be quite low margin, we are delivering, we have the distribution, we have the ways to distribute, so it's not as low margin for us as it seems. There's a reason behind our branded content studio for sure. We get a lot of things. I mean, I can remember the days of branded content was just grabbing the advertiser's content and slipping it on our sites and making sure that, we had it in some spot. You can't find it in search. We don't want Google pinging us and otherwise. But now, certainly that it's really thought out in that sense, but also turnkey. We then got to monetize, right? Cost per page views. We know how many page views you have. And then on the videos, as we said, there's quite a return there, and we definitely have views. Even with Time Inc., we tested out, using a singular 15-second cost per view, trying to use a different, and we realized it just made more sense to level with the social platforms and get back to 3 seconds. So native is, it's our custom, and then even that, right, putting on the IAB hat, what's native, what's branded, it's all one and in the same, custom content. There's quite a lot of life there, no less, and our advertisers are definitely behind it in terms of when they see how they can align either with edit and or some custom content. So there's a bunch there. But how are you guys doing at Smithsonian in terms of?
We're doing terribly in lots of ways. I feel like I've just sort of become woke on this thing because we're playing checkers and everyone else is playing chess. It drives me crazy. Like I said, getting 10 million people to show up at your website turns out to be pretty easy. But then actually figuring out who is that 7%, and we're doing a full workup. So all you vendors, come find me because we're working on it. But I want to let you know I have this thing on my head that said I don't have any money. So, but I still want to talk to you. I want to know what I'm missing. But no, seriously. But to me, I'm actually a biology major. I love data, and to me, I love this sort of sense. If you go to my office, you'll see a giant screen with all these custom live data feeds. I know what's happening on the site, but I don't know how to, take each individual person as the person who opened this and figure out what they want. Do they want to buy a trip to go someplace? Do they want to buy freeze-dried ice cream? Can I get them? I mean, we have a print magazine that people actually spend, tens of millions of dollars on. It's actually pretty successful as print. But should I force that on them rather than trying to start my own digital subscription? So I'm in this period of discernment, and I'm really kind of nutty about the whole thing. But I do think people love the Smithsonian, so to that extent, I think we have an advantage over, say, like Vanity Fair, which I love, full disclosure, but support Vanity Fair because they have great journalism is a perfectly good thing to do. They just launched a paywall. But support the Smithsonian, that's something everyone can get behind, I hope. All you can get behind, please. And so we're just trying to figure out where those buttons are. But we are at a situation where we have to completely tech up because we don't have the tools or the people to do it.
And that's a common thing. I mean, Bill and I are obviously going to hang a bunch more in terms of Meredith and all the things we're doing, but also like an older publisher that I worked at years back, a Nature publishing group, and it's that same in that premium, sort of a premium publisher. For folks in the science world, as Bill's saying, for biology, everyone wants to get published in Nature if you have
I just used to read Nature.
Yeah, exactly. But then it was, how do we monetize? We've got the folks there. Sometimes you have particular advertisers that want to be in front of that specialized, sort of audience, but just how? So there's definitely things to finagle through there. How about you, Dennis? doing it?
So I alluded to it a little bit previously, but over the last few months, we've added a couple of individuals to the organization. So I'll talk a little bit about infrastructure. We've brought someone in from a strategy standpoint, like a chief strategy officer and also a chief data officer. And on the data side, they've kind of been tasked with looking at those 3 different revenue streams for source media and saying, where's the overlap? And looking at the tech stack and seeing what we're trying to achieve, because I'm not going to say those 3 groups operated independently, because they didn't, but they operated in their best vision, which maybe wasn't the best vision for the entire organization, right? It was what was going to drive revenue specifically to what they were trying to achieve, going back to what do we want from the audience rather than what do we want to give to the audience. Kind of 2 different approaches. So the idea of the chief data officer is to take a look at that tech stack, and the same thing on the strategy side. You know, what are the commonalities across that audience, and how can we monetize that instead of just trying to sell them an event or sell them a subscription or sell them, you know, an ad, and looking at all of that. So that's really the undertaking that we've been going through over the last few months, and we'll continue to do so over the coming, you know, 12 to 18 months as well.
Well, that's brilliant. I'm going to bring you back with me to my office.
I'm not going.
But we have, I mean,
You have no money.
We're going to make money. But there are all these different P&Ls and strands. Maybe it's your different groups, and everyone's focused on their P&L. Everyone's squeezed for money. And how do you get them to play along? Because it could be the best thing I can do with this audience is sell them trips, you know, which doesn't help my P&L any. How do you work out? You must have a really good finance officer.
No.
Who's able to. No.
No, I don't mean it that way. I'll say this about P&Ls because that's an interesting point. And you know, hearing low margin and high margin, what I found in different organizations I've worked at, when the company's really behind a certain product, they find a way to make the P&L make sense, whereas that may not be accurate. So I think each organization, and for source media as a whole, we have to take an approach and say, is this where we want to be, and can we make money doing it? And really looking at it and stripping back all the nonsense and focusing on what are the hard costs, what are the soft costs, and how do we do it? And not every single one is going to be super profitable, but in a setting where we can include it with other pieces and not trying to sell one individual thing, that as a whole becomes profitable.
Right. And Dennis, and you said it, I mean, it's really kind of taking that step back, taking that lens on the strategy. I mean, even Charlie alluded to it earlier, right? Hearing that a slate is like not investing in video that more because it's just not there for them. And that makes sense for that business versus for others, very different. You know, so certainly makes sense there. All right, Rameez, for you, this infrastructure and insight, you veteran, you.
So I don't think we do anything spectacular on the actual technical side. I think we do the right things that everyone should be doing. So I'll take this a slightly different way. My first, I don't know, several months at the organization, I spent really focusing on the culture around metrics and changing that conversation. Because I found if you don't have that, which people start on surprisingly different sides of the coin in this industry, you really can't move anything. And so we were talking a lot about page views, and we were talking a lot about video views, and we were talking a lot about just raw subscribers on my first day there. And so what I really found to be more valuable than the technical tools are as valuable, a precursor, is really shifting the dialogue to things like lifetime value, customer acquisition cost, et cetera. And I'll just throw out, let's see if I'll get this right, I'll throw out a kind of comparative lifetime value score for us. So everyone knows a Facebook video is kind of a total 3-second view. Not dissing mobile video or social video. I think it'll be a huge part of the ecosystem. But even if you look at Nielsen's average audience, it's the average number of people spending 60 seconds or more. If you do the math there, you can quickly see how a social publisher quoting more views than the NBA Finals or whatever you see on linear TV is not actually true. Certainly not from an advertising dollar perspective. And then taking it a step further, because we actually do own the direct relationship for our newsletter subscribers. And I think Slate actually will at Slate publish something very similar, but our subscriber value is 350 times what it would be for a social view. So when someone comes into my open concept office and tells me that they want to maximize views, they'll probably see me start sweating and getting really mad, but then calming myself down and saying, well, what are you really trying to drive? And when you can hone in on that dichotomy between one view being 1/350th of a newsletter subscriber, the goals, and then therefore the technologies, et cetera, change. And like I said, Axios is less than 2 years old. I would love to hear from all of you the methods in which you're changing the culture internally, who the biggest stakeholders and allies you've found at your organizations are, because I think that's a conversation that needs to happen before.
Yep, and that's it. And Jana, you can definitely speak to it too, and that's kind of what we talked about. This really is changing the culture, right, in some ways with our audiences, and then what we can use for infrastructure and insight.
Yeah, for me, it's sometimes a matter of opinion that is easily shot down by the stakeholders. So I try and stray away from that as much as possible, and I encourage my team to do that as well. Probably in the last 12 months, I've spent a lot of time actually listening to our subscribers. So if I'm sitting in a focus group, or if I'm knee-deep in a 200-page subscriber survey, or if I'm listening into a customer service call, that's where the real data and insight comes from, and those are the people that are giving us money. So I think you can't really argue with those facts of what people are saying there, and then also, just looking at what they're saying on social media as well, which can be a dark, dark place to go, but I think it's all very valuable, and I think when you package that up and say, here's how we target this market, you have a lot of insights to what people are saying on how they use your product, how they don't use your product, what they want to see from your product, what isn't working with your product. And that's really what I've done to kind of change culture, because I think that often people just don't listen to their audience. They're really focused on building it and not listening to it.
Great point, Jana. I mean, literally, and that's definitely something we can all take. I mean, we're certainly trying to do that at Meredith, where it could just really, they're there. And I know for ourselves, we certainly have so many user groups, is just literally take that directly in. So one other thing that had certainly come up with these questions was limitations, right? And sort of, okay, above and beyond, now we think we've got some ideas and on how to get in front of this audience, but where does that get limited? And Rameez, you kind of started on that, and you talked about views, and as we talk about kind of the reference platforms and probably social the most, I guess, what are you feeling the most? Where do you feel you're limited the most? They're kind of in a newer, kind of platform and everything else.
Yeah, so I think we're not unique in terms of the trends on social, on search, on Apple News, et cetera. But if you buy what I just said, you would say that, okay, well, that's okay. What can we use these platforms for? And we kind of split it up into, it's marketing for us, but we kind of split it up into two different categories. When we post to bring people to the website, we do get advertising revenue from referral links, but what's equally as important is brand marketing to prime users that may subscribe, that may pay us down the line, but not only that may attend an event, that may download an app and save $20 per download of opportunity cost. And once we've primed those users with that kind of awareness marketing, which is our content, we can use those social and search tools, which are still the greatest marketing tools for a direct response advertiser in the history of the world, to drive extremely efficient cost pers. And the engagement hasn't gone down yet. So with 1 million subscriptions, we have over 1 million subscriptions, and we have, on average, the average subscriber subscribes to over 3 different newsletters and opens each of those newsletters 45 to 50% of the time. So if you can think about those tools rather than, if you can quote those metrics rather than the scale in themselves, but really the scale and what it gets you down the funnel, they're extremely powerful to date still from both a brand and a direct response marketing perspective.
Great. And it's great to hear, and especially from the scale, from a Meredith standpoint, right, where we're not dealing with the paywalls and the subscriptions because we're dealing with so much print, right, and where we've started and how, digital thereafter, but we've been able to see a lot of different growth in that respect. So we definitely want to, in and of our own conversation we've been having up here, we definitely want to hear some questions from all of you, and especially if your models are here in, or if you have any specific questions, we'd love to start with some of those. And we have plenty more we can talk about, but we want to make sure we incorporate some of yours. Questions? Okay. Yep, right over here. Sorry, thanks, Maya.
Cindy with
Cindy? Thanks, Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Novak with Savio Mobile. And this is for Rameez, although anyone else, please feel free to chime in because it's a fairly general question. You had mentioned that you only have 5% completion rate on your audience reading articles. Do you notice a difference between digital and mobile, different platforms? Do you have different results? And what are the percentages of digital versus mobile?
Got it. Sorry, one quick point of clarification. Our articles have very high completion rate because of their length and the structure of the site. But on average, in a mobile environment, 5% of people, there's a 5% completion rate on articles, which is one of the primary justifications for building Axios. The reality to the second part of the question was the kind of desktop-mobile split. The reality for any new publisher which is building an audience via the channels that are most effective and available today is that at least 2/3, but probably closer to 85% of their audience will be in a mobile environment, or at least partially will be in a mobile environment. So the desktop will not be their primary form. And so that's kind of where we've come up with every part of our product. It needs to be mobile. The entire site is responsive. All of our development teams are, they have iPhones or whatever device next to their desk to QA on that behalf, and the advertising as well as the content. So everything about the site has really been built with a mobile-first point of view.
I have a follow-up question, which is you have like 25 emails, right? Newsletters, something like that?
I'm not going to quote the exact number right now, but it's above 15 and below 25.
I subscribe to all of them, I think. But my question is, we have newsletters as well, and they're very popular. And I was wondering, I don't have the data, so I was going to ask you, because you probably have the tools to do that, which was my thought experiment was that mobile, in a weird way, is great for newsletters. Or put it another way, newsletters are a great product for mobile, because you're standing in line, you're not going to type in www.smithsonian.com. You're going to just open your email like everyone else does. And if you have a newsletter at the top of the box that says, hey, the latest on First Man, you click it open. Do you see that most of your mobile traffic comes from this very old-fashioned thing called email?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like the last 2 years, newsletters are back in. It's cool. I think we got lucky on the timing there. I think there's something one level above the newsletter product itself, and it's that kind of bundle of insight and expertise that's connected to a personality that you can have a direct relationship with. Right now, we do that really well in the newsletter format, and you're totally right. It's for those exact reasons you mentioned that I think that works.
I like being totally right once in a while.
You have to find out how to make money now being right. And so what we really want to find is what are the next generations of products that we can build that maintain that very specific thing that we're doing well in newsletters.
Yeah, and I would say just offer up, we think a lot about newsletters as a product for the same reason that the fellow earlier mentioned, which is my email address is the one place you can reach me, and you know you always got me. Nobody else has my email address. Allman@gmail, just so you all know. And so when I subscribe to newsletters, they're always doing one-on-one or whatever. I don't always log into various websites, but I'm always on a one-to-one basis with my newsletter people. So that's an interesting idea that I find very powerful, because that's how you reach somebody and you know it's them.
But I want to follow up with Rameez about newsletters, because there's also limitations on how much Axios is dependent on newsletter as the main source of consumption. I read Mike every morning, but it's all in email. There's no opportunity for interaction. What limitations does that put on you from the data side in understanding what the audience really is interactive with and most interested in if you're not clicking through anywhere?
There's definitely data limitations, and I think they probably map very closely with those of the podcast world. So we do have to do a lot of surveys. We do have to kind of collect data from third-party workarounds, but there's kind of a dichotomy of the data you actually need when you're selling or producing a newsletter versus my experience with selling or producing a website. And so those things, like having cookie data, it doesn't matter because you have their email and they're actually willing to engage with you. They're willing to fill out a survey. And so you can actually get a ton of information about them without the kind of traditional ways that we get data on a website. But I will not lie to you, it's certainly frustrating to kind of have a lot of blind spots without asking readers directly. And as we map to other platforms, whether that's podcasts or an app or otherwise. What we really want to do is we want to find a way to take that format and apply it in other places. I don't think we're going to be a newsletter-only company for we're not yet. We're not already, but we're not going to be a newsletter primary company for the long term. And so it's really how can we bring that format into other places where you have an intimate relationship with the personality or writer, and then how can you fund it?
And same with us. I mean, at Meredith, right, with the newsletters, it's certainly something that we have with all of our B2B brands, something that we've leveraged for a long time. We've sat there testing how do we get native into those newsletters, right, to find another interaction point. And, you know, we've had some testing here, therein. But, you know, back to Cindy's question, all things mobile. I mean, really, and in terms of the completion, I mean, we're on social so very much as we talk of our advertising, and we have several products that are mobile only. Just as sure, we have some display products that are desktop only, obviously for rich media reasons and things, but we certainly are seeing our traffic, and if we're going to be reading, we think of things like social style or mobile style content, and it's certainly where we're at. And then, I mean, certainly in plugging, again, dealing with the IAB so much, and even for the folks who don't have as much money, and while they'll want to be plugging for memberships, I mean, they've got so many numbers and so much data around their mobile. It's where so much of their time is being spent now, right? All of IAB and all of the ad products and everything else that they're looking at, and as well as in content, all things mobile. So I think there was maybe another question.
Yeah, I actually have one follow-up just to stay on the newsletter.
It was more like a supporting argument around newsletters. And Rameez, I think I appreciate you saying that, which is when you take that long view, yeah, right now in the media, in the newsletter, perhaps it's not generating tons of revenue for Axios. But as I get closer to Axios as a brand, and Axios is taking playing the long game with me, and I just engender myself closer and closer to Axios. When they do come out with other products, other offerings, I'll be pretty quick to convert into those because I already fell in love with the brand through the newsletter. And so that's why what I was talking about this morning is publishers shouldn't be myopic and just focus on how much money am I making just from the newsletter, but you play that long game, and I think Axios is going to win.
Thanks for the backup. One quick addendum to that is we actually are making money from the newsletters now, which is great. But the way that the lifetime value metric that I quoted, the way that I look at that is kind of two or threefold. And it's the money now, but then it's also the potential for an app downloads. We know we're going to launch an app in the next year. And for anyone who's done app marketing, they know how expensive it is for an engaged user. We know that a subscription product might be down the line. We have events almost every couple weeks now, and we know that those event attendees come almost exclusively from our newsletter audience. And so there's all of these built-in opportunity costs that I kind of price in when I calculate that LTV metric.
Not to kind of steal us away from newsletters. My name is Patrick Crane. I'm with Blueconic. I'm bullish on newsletters. Our work with the Globe showed that newsletter subscribers were 10 times more likely to pay in their subscription model. So I agree with everyone that there's a long tail here. They're a means to an end. They're not an end in themselves. My question actually is a little bit more on, we're talking about developing new products, and I think that's obviously very important. We're seeing kind of the application of the diversified portfolio theory to media companies, and that you need diversified revenue. But the one challenge I constantly hear when speaking to people is staffing these new products. Where do you find the skill sets, the people, not just in like hours in the day, but in the new skill sets you need to maybe engage with this new product? How are you guys solving for this? Where are you finding these people, or are you not seeing this as a challenge at all?
It's a great question, and I'll jump off on it only because, you know, unlike some of the folks who might quote not having money, right? Meredith has done it via acquisition, right? As I'm sitting here. And sometimes those acquisitions, while Meredith's might be quite large, you know, they can certainly be a lot smaller. In our case, our native CMS, right? That was Selectable Media, which is now in-house and proprietary. That's also our chief digital officer, a lot of our ad product base, and, you know, quite a bit that we've managed to acquire therein, and the same with just Time Inc. as a whole, and just for digital, right? And sometimes it's acquiring some of the smaller product folks, seeing what they can do therein, working alongside. So that's one way, you know, and then also just acquiring the talent in itself. I know that myself, the reason I arrived at Time Inc. is I was agency, publisher, startup based, right? It was all these different things and kind of wore this product hat, yet knew how to figure out how to go ahead and market and do some of these things. So really talent has been a help, but it's a great question.
I'd say talent acquisition and retention is the biggest challenge, because what you'll find is someone else is always doing something cooler, right? So you launch the next great thing, and 6 months later you lose your person because somebody else is doing something that they find even more interesting than what you were doing. And that's just an ongoing challenge. I don't think there's a magic potion. I don't think there's a magic place to find people. Acquisition is obviously part of it, acquiring new companies and new products. But it's also engaging the folks you have internally and letting them think, letting them come up with ideas. We have a lot of individuals who are in market at events like this and other events, learning about what's going in like the ed tech, martech world, and really kind of pulling some of that information back. And it's being in a culture and an environment, like an organization that doesn't think the smartest people are at the C-level. There's a lot of smart people in the organization that have a voice and can come up with ideas. And that's really what our executive committee's done, is kind of empower people further down the food chain to come with ideas and bring those to the table for discussion.
Let's squeeze one last question in. Go ahead.
Great, thanks. Jeff Kupiecki, head of Power Inbox. In full disclosure, we monetize email, so I really appreciate all the plugs here for justifying us. My question, though, is we've been thinking a lot about what's next or what else would be similar. And I'm curious for the panelists, how do you guys feel about push notifications? So browser-based, not mobile, but browser-based push. Could that be a new channel where you can control the dialogue with your end users, but also create a way to monetize that?
Do you want to jump in, Rameez?
I've gone back and forth on this one. At the end of the day, I see push notifications. You've seen Chrome has already updated their notifications kind of several times in the last 3 years. I view that as a side door where other people control the flow of traffic. And so that gets put in the other category then, which how can we use those as a marketing tool? They're definitely higher intent than a social user. And so if we can bring people in from push notifications, either on mobile or desktop, and then have them subscribe, have them sign up, or have them take a bunch of actions we see as high indicators of long lifetime value or high lifetime value, that's very valuable to me, but we don't at Axios see it as valuable in itself.
Yeah, and it's a good tie-in. I mean, and it's good to talk about things like push notifications and newsletters. And Steve kind of brought it up earlier, right? I loved it, the BSOs, the bright, shiny objects. I know it's something we deal with at Meredith. I mean, in terms of dealing with all the social, I mean, we cannot respond quick enough for the IGTV, sort of just as of the last 72 hours, right, in the asks and things like the IAB new fronts and making sure that those things are out there. So it's certainly, as per the panel, new products, there's always going to be something shiny or new, as Dennis had certainly mentioned, but it's just knowing where to strategize and focus your energy. So thanks to our panel. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you guys for a great kickoff. And we're going to be extending this in our roundtable at the end of the morning on the same topic. So thanks all of you. That was great discussion.